What's going on, guys? This is Alonzo Nation here, back with another video. If you guys ever checked out my first video talking about DeJounte Murray going to the Atlanta Hawks, make sure to check that out. Gonna be talking about another team in the Eastern Conference, one of my favorite teams, one of the teams you see on your screen right now, the Chicago Bulls. And they really stunned the NBA last year. They finished with a 46 and 36 record. We're first in the East until injuries and COVID and a bunch of issues caught up with them, but really love the deals they made last offseason, signing trades for Lonzo, DeRozan. They brought in Caruso as a free agent. Still crazy the Lakers let Caruso go. I know they probably couldn't afford everybody, but I mean, he was such a key part of them winning a championship. And he brings that championship experience to the Bulls, and he was a huge part. Obviously, had a few unfortunate injuries with Grayson Allen knocking him to the floor and everything else, but a lot of these guys played huge parts when healthy to this team. And DeRozan played at an MVP level. Lonzo improved his three-point shooting. Great playmaker, excellent defender. Caruso, excellent defender. So really those moves worked out, and they got eliminated by the Bucks. No shame in that. The Bucks are a fantastic team. I think the Bulls in this offseason's goal was to add a little bit more size. And they did that. They added Andre Drummond. Not a guy who's going to defend Giannis by any means, but they needed a better backup big for Vooch. Tristan Thompson, although a solid addition at the time, just didn't really work out for the Bulls. He just never really played with consistency. Had a few good games, but nothing really to write home about. Drummond, he's only 28. He's been around a while. He's been on the Pistons, the Nets, the Lakers, the Sixers, and he's going to be a solid backup. And 6.6 million for 2 years, has a player option for the second year. So really a team-friendly deal. I don't really think that's pricey at all for Drummond, especially with the way he can rebound. One of the best rebounding centers in the league. Not going to space the floor, but a good pick and roller. So a good addition for the Bulls. They need a better backup center. They still had Tony Bradley on the roster. They had Marco, who's looking like he's in better shape than he was. So we'll see how Andre Drummond does. Great addition overall, though. Think it helps the Bulls off their bench. And definitely a bigger improvement than Tristan Thompson. And then they also signed Goran Dragic, which when I first read that, I was like, okay, is Kobe White going to get traded, which is still to be determined? Is Lonzo going to be 100% going to the next season with his knee? All that's still to be determined. Still a long off season to go. I think maybe once KD's trade situation gets figured out, a lot more deals will be made. You'll see guys like possibly Kobe White and John Collins and Jakob Portal trades possibly go down. And the Bulls, a lot of Bulls fans want KD. Don't know if we really have the right package to match a team like Toronto or Golden State when it comes to pieces and draft picks. It would probably take both Kobe White, Patrick Williams, probably a DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine, one of Caruso and Lonzo, maybe Vooch. It just depends what the Bulls want to offer, but it would take a lot. And would the Bulls want to give up that much? Obviously, when you're trading for a player as KD, as good as KD, you're going to have to give up a lot. You're going to have to give up something to get something, as they always say. And I like KD on the Bulls. I think if you keep the right amount of pieces around him, it'd be a championship team. I know he's a huge Lonzo supporter. They signed Dragic and Drummond, who are good friends with KD. He's also good friends with LaVine. They played on Team USA together. So really a fascinating situation with KD. Every team in the league should have interest. Why wouldn't they? But we'll see how that situation develops, and then maybe Kobe White goes to a different team for maybe a bigger, lengthier backup power forward for P. Will. We'll see how that situation unfolds. But they brought in Dragic. He'll probably be a backup, depending on Lonzo's health. If Lonzo isn't healthy, he'll probably be a starter, either him or Caruso. Vooch was a huge part of recruiting him here. Just a good addition overall for the Bulls. I really like the two additions, him and Drummond. They brought back Derrick Jones Jr. A lot of fans question Derrick Jones Jr. And to me, I like Derrick Jones Jr. He's a solid shooter, not a great shooter, but he'll shoot and make a few shots. He's lengthy, and he could play the five if he has to. He could play the four, the three. So very versatile. He's still young. I think he's about to be 26, 27 next year. So 2 years, 6.6 million. Same deal as Drummond, player option the second year. And I like the move. I mean, Derrick Jones Jr. isn't an all-star, he isn't a superstar, but he's a solid backup. Who knows if he'll play a lot? But we'll just have to see. And maybe if he stays healthy, he has a good, solid year, and he's a good fit for the Bulls for a few more seasons. We'll see. But a solid addition there. They re-signed Zach LaVine, 5-year, $215 million deal. They had to get this done. And really, there weren't a lot of other teams that could really top that offer anyways. The Bulls have his bird rights. They can offer him the most money. And a lot of teams just didn't really have the cap space to really go after a guy like LaVine. You saw a lot of guys re-sign with their teams in this offseason. There just wasn't a lot of teams with cap space. So it was really a no-brainer for LaVine. He's familiar with Chicago. He's grown up here and got better as a player here. And it's the first $100 million deal the Bulls have ever given out to a player. So that was surprising to me to hear that. But LaVine's worth the money. He's going to come back healthier. And him and DeRozan are going to be a dynamic duo. And hopefully Vooch has a good year. He's in a contract year. But all in all, a solid offseason for the Bulls. They didn't do nothing flashy. They didn't need to, in my opinion. They just need to fill a little bit of holes they have on the roster. And they're not done. Still a little bit of off-season. Kobe White situation will be something to watch. They've been rumored to be interested in Jakob Portal and maybe a guy like John Collins. Don't know what those guys would take in a trade to get. Probably not as much for a Jakob Portal. John Collins would probably take maybe a draft pick and maybe a Kobe White. But they preached that this roster was going to stay together. They stuck by their word. They had a few veterans like Drummond and Dragic. They brought back LaVine. They brought back Derrick Jones Jr. And the biggest obstacle for the Bulls next year is health. If they can stay healthy, keep this roster 100%, have Lonzo, Caruso, LaVine, all these guys healthy for at least 60 to 70 games. Obviously, you're not going to have a full team healthy for all 82 games. But all in all, great offseason for the Bulls. I think they will be improved. And like I said, if they can stay healthy and really keep this team together health-wise, then they'll be fine. They were first in the East when healthy. I think that's why AK and Mark Eversley said that. They want to preach, continue with this roster. And I agree. I don't really see the point in blowing up the roster. And they still need a power forward. Isaiah Roby's out there. He's 22. He can shoot. He can defend. That could be somebody they look into. They still have a few days. By the time this video gets out, those days will be past. But they have the Daniel Tice trade exception they could use, or roster exception. So they could use that by a certain date. Maybe they sign Isaiah Roby, get him in a trade. I think he's on waivers, so they'd have to get him in a trade. They bring him in. Maybe they waive a Tony Bradley, and there's your backup four. I mean, that would be a great addition to the Bulls. He's the type of player they like. He's lengthy. He's young. He can shoot. And he'd be a solid backup for Patrick Williams. So there's a lot of potential moves that still could be made for the Bulls. And you still have, I always tell fans this, you always have next year's trade deadline as well. The Bulls are going to be in contention in the East. The East is going to be very tough, but they have the lineup and the personnel to get it done. Like I said, if they can stay healthy, they will be in that hunt. And there's been a few teams that have improved. The Celtics, the Sixers got PJ Tucker. The Bucks have added some solid shooting on the bench. The Heat are always going to be in that discussion. We'll see where KD goes, where Kyrie goes. The Nets could still be a solid team depending on what they get back. So there's going to be a tough East. Tough East. But the Bulls, they have veterans. They have guys who can defend, score. They have everything you need to win. They just need a backup power forward, in my opinion, and they'll be fine. I think they can get through the start of the season without that as long as Patrick Williams performs and is healthy. But other than that, this is a pretty solid team, especially the starting lineup. I love the starting lineup. I think they got a lot of scoring with Vooch and Lonzo and DeMar and LaVine, and Patrick Williams will get a lot of open opportunities with those guys on the court. So really a solid team. Is it a championship team? That's to be determined. And you never know. They can make one move and be in that hunt. But right now, I think they could go deep in the playoffs. Not a championship team, and that's me speaking as a Bulls fan. Not a championship team, but a very good contending team. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video talking about the Chicago Bulls. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.